Welcome to the Visually Hidden podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I'm an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is David Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
Listen, before we get into it today, I just wanted to acknowledge this is being recorded in the first week of February in 2024, and we just recently got the news of Carl Weathers passing. I just wanted to acknowledge and throw it out there about him. Great actor, always lit up the screen, always made me happy. Whenever he turned up in something, it made it better for me. I remember when I was watching, I think it was Toy Story of Terror, and he showed up as Combat Carl, and that just made me enjoy it so much more. And even in The Mandalorian, I didn't know that he was going to be involved in it, and then when he came on the screen, my interest skyrocketed because of his presence. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Carl Weathers. Very, very sad news. But again, we have the films, we have Rocky, we have Predator. So I think his legacy is well intact. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Carl Weathers. And if you guys have anything you'd like to say.
Yesterday, I was very busy with running errands and running around, and my mom had told me that he passed away, and I was completely shocked, and it was like a sucker punch. And then I was just immediately sad. And I just immediately think about all the movies that I had planned on sharing with my son, Rocky being one of them. And of course, my kids know him as Combat Carl right now. Yeah, when you think about what he left behind, the great performances in Arrested Development, Happy Gilmore, so there's comedy, there's action, there's sci-fi, there's dramatic stuff like stuff in the Rocky series. What a great body of work to leave behind. And he just seemed like a really genuinely nice guy.
I know Stallone wrote it, but he said it, and Eye of the Tiger, baby. Eye of the Tiger.
So I was thinking about some stuff as of late. And Pete, you and I have been at this stuff, filmmaking stuff, for a very long time. And I think back to the days when I was in high school, and buddies of mine, we got together. We wanted to make some sketch comedy stuff like, SNL and, things of that nature. And then even I tried to make like an independent horror film when I was in high school all by myself. And I remember the days of sitting there and trying to edit with 2 VCRs, and what a bitch that was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that age, at that place in time, and having the aspirations that I had, some days it felt like everything was completely out of my reach. Like the dream of getting your work made and put out there seemed like such an uphill battle to climb. And then I turn around now, and we're
Right.
a couple decades later, and here we are with my son filming movies on his iPhone, or on my iPhone, and then uploading it to his computer, and he's like editing it, and he's making trailers and gag reels, and and then we show them in the living room. And I guess my question is to you guys, because we're all creative in one way, shape, or form, but usually we come back to the movie world. Does it make you feel hopeful now that all this stuff, you could pick up your phone and you could make a feature, because I know for me that sometimes when I feel like, man, I'm not getting projects done, I'm not kind of where I want to be, but then just to know the possibility to change that is in my pocket. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like it helps your process? Like it frees you up to try and explore different things that you might not have tried back in the day when you had to have, film in the camera, you had to, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, the technology, it's good for people who wants to do something in their own, but in another way, it destroys the magic of cinema for me. I love the idea of doing something phenomenal, and the fact that not everybody could do it makes it artistical and magical in a way. And now everybody can do shit with their phone, and most of the time is not very good. So, but they pretend that they are directors because they can do it with their iPhone. Good for them, but for me, it's not cinema. And I feel like maybe the cinema industry could be a bit impacted in a bad way because of those things. So I know it's a very personal point of view, but it's good and bad, and I mostly see the bad in this.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair take.
Yeah, I agree with Anne.
Woohoo!
I was going down this road anyways. Like I made my decision to pursue filmmaking at an insanely early age, but I didn't have a lot of money. So when the tools became more commercially available, it was nice and it was exciting. But again, like there is a sort of resentment in there because I feel like, yeah, people can just pick it up and do it. And the technology takes a lot of the skill out of it. It is an art, and you do have to practice your craft, whether it be lighting or photography or directing and blocking or even storyboarding or just basic planning in general, or even the craft of acting. And you got to start somewhere, and you have to practice. And so I don't like hold it against people like your son Steve who are practicing. Like that's ideal. It's more so the people who think like, I got an A in English in high school, so I must be a
Right.
writer. I know how to write. I'm a writer. And no, you're not a writer because your grammar is poor, your syntax is poor. You can't string together two coherent ideas. You can't tell a story effectively or efficiently. You can't edit yourself. You are not a writer. Just because you can type does not make you a writer. And just because you can hit record doesn't make you a filmmaker. That doesn't mean you can't become one, but these are tools that I think can help you if you use them, in a way that they're intended. And in a lot of these cases, I mean, instead of going and buying a camcorder to shoot rehearsals or to do storyboarding, like, great, I got my phone, I can take pictures, I can do my storyboards or my blocking, or I can scout locations and boom, it's all right there. And I got my notes, I can make my notes. It's awesome in that regard. But I think, like Anne said, it sucks some of the discipline out and it doesn't make it
Yeah.
cinema. And I think there's a difference between filming and cinema. And I think there's a difference between YouTube and
No,
cinema.
no, I agree.
No offense to anyone. It's just a personal preference on my professional walk that I've been doing for, a few
Yeah, no,
decades.
I fall into both camps, and I'm not a big fan of technology, but the first time I auditioned for an independent film, I think I must have been like around 20 or something like that. I got a small part. We were shooting all in location because, I mean, you really, you're independent. There's no budget, so wherever you could shoot, you shoot. And I remember spending a lot of days with these guys making this film, and then got a call from them one day. Hey, project's over. My heart sank. I was like, what do you mean? Like, they had taken the film to be developed, and the person who did it overexposed the film, ruined it, and the guy had no more money to continue. Like we talked about with Misery Loves Company, when you thought you lost all that footage, but then you picked up that software and it's boom.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yes, when we were doing Misery Loves Company, we did lose some footage and we were able to recover it. But there have been other times where cards have gotten corrupted and I've lost digital stuff and I've had to go back and reshoot it. And that's a great luxury about it, is like, okay, I didn't spend all of my budget
yeah,
on film and film processing and film storage. I just had to get a new memory card and then schedule a couple of things. And people, were usually accommodating for that. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen with
yeah,
digital as well. I was filming a music video this summer and I just did some behind the scenes stuff on my phone. Like I was filming on the camera setup and everything, but just to get like, something for social media. And I hit record on a few things and three of them didn't show up. They're just black tiles on my phone. So it happens even in that
yeah.
capacity.
You have the tools, but you still, what you said, Pete, you still need the talent. To quote Winston from the Ghostbusters, we have the tools and we have the talent. You need both to make it as a filmmaker, as an artist. It's nice to have these little trinkets in our pocket to do all this kind of work, and you still need to hone the craft. Like I said, when we were younger, it was like you're working on VHS, you're editing on VCRs. So I have a mixed feeling about
Yeah.
it, but I always go back to, yes, you need to have the skill, you need to be disciplined, you need to learn what's come before you, you need to have a certain level of respect, um, and don't take it for granted. Because I mean, man, if we had this stuff when I was a kid, I could have got so much more stuff accomplished.
Right, but you know what? Like we did have this stuff when we were kids because we didn't have to go and get a film camera and we didn't have to learn about developing and emulsions and color timing and all that other stuff. We had VHS and we had mini DV and Super 8 and Digital 8. So we had these things. And as far as editing goes, yeah, we did have Premiere and we had iMovie when we were younger. We had early versions of Final Cut and stuff, and Vegas, Sony Vegas, if anybody's ears are ringing right now. This was there. It's gotten even simpler and it's gotten even more user friendly, which is fine. But again, it's the tools and the talent. You can go on YouTube and you can search, iPhone versus
Hmm.
Red, the camera, and you can see people, who have no experience using the Red and people with tons of experience using the iPhone. And they just do these comparisons to show that there is a talent factor involved in the outcome and the results. And you're only going to get that through experience. So again, having it in your pocket and being able to do it at your leisure is fine. And it's great and it's good. And it does help you work towards a goal. But just because you have it doesn't mean you're the be all
Yeah.
end all. I think that's where it becomes like a, toe stepping situation where it's like, I don't want to step on your toes, but you need more practice. And a lot of people don't like to
Well,
hear that. I've been doing this for decades and I've done quite a few films and I still learn
well, you
something on every
Yeah, but I mean, as long
project.
as I know you, I mean, I will say you always put 110% into whatever you're doing, and you will sit there. If you need to learn something, I know you'll learn it. Where it's like I don't have the fucking patience with technology sometimes. But to your credit, man, you really sit down and you really bust your ass to make sure you could do it to the best of your ability.
If the person behind the iPhone is has a good idea and is dedicated to what he wants to do and has passion and motivation, he can do something really great. While most people they use their iPhone just to for me to make pictures with movement. Nowadays they don't really want to show something to spread a message behind something. It just they want to make a film, they want to make a video and post it on YouTube. That's why we're losing the magics of films because there is nothing really thought before doing it. I'm the kind of person who likes to watch a movie with long close-ups and specific scenes where you just see a hand for a minute, but it means something. And when you see what you have on YouTube with homemade iPhones. It's not the kind of movie you can find. There is no magical behind it. That's my personal point of view.
Well, Anne, I wanted to ask you a question specifically. I know you're working on a series now. Have you ever been tempted, or have you ever tried to maybe just do a test drive to see how the scenes are playing off each other, or if you get any ideas?
So I haven't filmed any part of my series because, to be really frank with you, I'm not an expert with filming. I know it's not something I'm good at. So if one day I get produced, I will ask a director because for me it's really a job. It's not something that everybody could do. When I will have a director, he will be the boss of the filming, of course. So for me, it's really two different jobs. I'm the writer, I have the idea, and then I trust the technical partner, the director.
I think that's something that a lot of people kind of get lost in is they think like, oh, well, yeah, I'm the be all end all because they see their favorite filmmakers, they see them doing it and they want to aspire to those heights or those levels of success. And the technology side, it really is a double-edged sword because on one hand, yes, it is very accessible and anybody can do it, but it is also tragic because anybody can do it. And so I think part of it is that filtering process where people learn their craft, but not everybody has the filter to filter themselves or edit themselves. I do think that having the accessibility to technology will help people who are really serious, and it's just a matter of
Yeah.
time. But in the meantime, you have to contend with all of the people who have no filter and have no couth and have no sense.
Robert Rodriguez, who comes to mind for me, with this type of stuff. Because here's a guy, El Mariachi. He had like two like work lights from Home Depot, a guitar case, and a camera, and everybody he could pull together, friends, family, to make that movie and to get that movie, up on its feet. And that's a great movie. Guys like that who really paved the way.
Today, we are discussing Maverick Filmmakers, and I think he's an excellent example of that. A Maverick filmmaker is one who kind of works outside of convention, one who can wear many hats, which most independent filmmakers have to do in order to get their film done. And that's something that they learn along the way. It's like, oh, great, I got this great idea. Okay, write it down. Okay, now you're a writer. Okay, well, now I want to like film this idea. How do I film this idea? Well, now you're a producer. Okay, well, who's going to like tell people how to do it? Well, then now you're the director. Okay, good. Well, now you need a director of photography. You need a camera person or an operator. You need somebody to shoot it. So now you're a DP. Okay, well, now I have all my footage. How do I show people what I want them to see? Well, now you got to edit it. Okay, now you got to become an editor. Okay, well, yeah, you've cut it together, but it sounds terrible. Well, now you're a sound mixer and a sound designer and, a sound recordist and an engineer. Okay, but it also doesn't look all that great. Well, now you're, a color grader and all these different things come with this package, this title of filmmaker. And not everybody can do everything, but some people work at it. Some people take it seriously. Some people pursue it, like Robert Rodriguez. He's a perfect example. And El Mariachi is really it's not quite the beginning of his story, but for all intents and purposes, it's a very good point to begin at. And he wrote a book. He published his journal of it. It's called Rebel Without a Crew. And I've read it, and I could have been reading my own journal from that point. Like as I was going through it, I was like, wow, this is very familiar. And he just happened to have a stroke of good luck where he was put in contact with some people in LA who liked his work.
Yeah, I always looked at Robert Rodriguez as a big inspiration for a guy who just wanted to do it and just put his mind to it and he got it done, and what I liked about him also is if you ever look at the extras on his DVDs for his films, he did something called the 10-minute film school, where he teach you how he did one specific thing. So I always liked the fact that he didn't try to hoard all the knowledge for himself, or, he tried to take what he learned and share it with people and kind of give back a little bit. So I always thought that was a really cool thing that he didn't have to do, but he did.
His career has been heavily influenced and inspired by John Carpenter, who was another Maverick filmmaker. He wrote, he produced, he directed, he edited, he scored a lot of his films. So, and that's something that Robert Rodriguez carried forward and other filmmakers continue to carry forward. And I think, again, it's just a matter of staying the course, but also improving. Again, just because you have the technology in the palm of your hand and you can do it and put it out there and feel accomplished, but okay, take some of that constructive criticism, look at it objectively and see, okay, what can I do better? And then the next time employ that, and then things do get better. Sometimes they get worse, and that could be a sign as well, going out of business, but
Yeah, I just I mean, and that's the other thing too. You mentioned the scoring, like the comparison between him and Carpenter. I mean, Rob Rodriguez plays guitar beautifully, and some of the score pieces he writes for some of his characters are just fantastic. And I know, and he's open to collaboration. I think he let Johnny Depp write his own score piece for Once Upon a Time in Mexico for the character of Agent Sands, which I thought was a very cool thing. With some people might be like, no, this is my thing. This is my film, but he's open to working with people. I think he's one of the best types of people to have making film and sharing with people and sharing his knowledge. I mean, I think that's that everyone. If everyone tried to strive to be a little bit more like that, a little bit more giving, a little bit more open, might be a better place.
He didn't used to score. Like that's something that came during the course of his career. And I believe it's in his book, Rebel Without a Crew. I remember him talking about how, okay, yeah, like I'm going to go take a Steadicam course and I'm going to learn how to operate the Steadicam. And then I'm going to be a Steadicam operator. So he wanted to have those skills in his pocket and he worked towards them, where now, yeah, he can shoot his own films all by himself and have them come out looking stellar because he took the time and applied himself and did, he didn't just release the first thing he shot. He practiced and he tested stuff and then he worked towards it and got better at it. But if you go back, he wasn't doing all of that in the beginning. He was doing a good part of it, but he worked towards it and improved. And I think that's really the big takeaway is, yes, you can, but you have to.
Absolutely. It's not just going to happen for you. You got to work for it.
I was wondering if in your mind, Hitchcock and Kubrick, because we talked about them in the previous episodes, do you think those directors are maverick filmmakers?
Well, I think, with regard to Hitchcock and Kubrick especially, and this has kind of long been my philosophy, is that if you are a director, you should know everybody's job, because then you are able to communicate your direction to them more clearly, and that shows them that you understand it, and you get a better result, and it's a better work environment. I think most successful directors, they do have this maverick sense about them. And Hitchcock, especially, I mean, he started out in silent films and he never took credit on writing, but he would work with his writers. They would sit in his office and they would write everything, and then everything would be meticulously storyboarded. And so, like, again, we talked about this when we talked about Psycho, but the film was done in his mind before he even rolled film. Going into it with that sense, yeah, he didn't write music, and he didn't edit, he didn't do the costumes, but he had a say in everything, and you pick up all these skills along the way. Kubrick started out as a photographer. He didn't shoot his own films, but he could very effectively communicate to his director of photography exactly what he wanted. James Cameron, he's another example. That guy can do everything except act.
And a short film.
Yeah.
It's always too long.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, but yeah, being able to do everything, I think, is a mark of a good director. And you don't have to be perfect at it. You don't have to be like the be all end all guy of that particular element of filmmaking. But I think having a working understanding of it helps you get a better result, which in turn gets you a better film, which in turn gives you a better career. And so when you look at people like Hitchcock, Kubrick, Cameron, Rodriguez, Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, all of these guys, a lot of them started out in film schools and they learned all the different components of filmmaking. And if they didn't start in film schools, then they started out independently where they had to learn it in order to advance.
I don't know if you know Xavier Dolan in the US. This guy is an actor, director, writer, costume designer. Maybe he does the music also. I don't know. His most famous movie is Mummy in 2014. He's an autodidact. He learned everything by himself. He started, he was 20 years old as an actor, and he observed every job during his acting, and now he's doing everything by himself, and he's 30 years old. I don't know exactly his age, but yeah, he made really, we call him the cinema prodigy here. Is you should have a look at his work because it's fantastic. We have Luc Besson also, but I'm not sure you will consider him as a maverick filmmaker. For me, he is, because he tries to change things in cinema. I don't know if you realize that here in the US, but in France, he created a school also to help people to get to know each job of cinema. Yeah, he tries to do new things. He tries to control every part of it, even the music also. Even if he doesn't do it himself, he always asks the same guy, to Eric Serra, to make the music for his films. He always tries to make a film about something that nobody really talked about, like the Big Blue. I'm not sure you have many movies about deep diving, and also you have Léon, the Professional. It's not the kind of movies at that time that you had before. So, he's trying new stuff, and he wants to control all of it. He's a writer, a director. Even the marketing is involved in it. He made a saga here called Taxi. You have 5 movies in it, and he's really controlling the marketing, the promotion. So, yeah, for me, he's also a maverick filmmaker.
There's a word called auteur, which is something that they assign to filmmakers who have like a very specific style. And I feel like it's kind of built out of, it's like Maverick is like the phase 1, and then they advance to the level of auteur, where you can look at a scene from one of their movies and be like, I know who made that movie. It just has their like signature all over the frame. And I feel like Luc Besson, he definitely has that. Like, you kind of know when you're watching one of his movies, even though he kind of crosses borders and boundaries. If you watch The Professional, it has a very unique style, and La Femme Nikita, and even The Fifth Element, they all have this look and tone and feel about them that he imparts on his work. And I think that's kind of just the Maverick idea evolved. Like, that's where it goes. Once you have all your ducks in a row and you are a Maverick, then you level up to auteur. And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
I think one of my favorite filmmakers, one of my favorite Maverick filmmakers, and one of my favorite auteurs is Charlie Chaplin. And this week's VHS selection is a Charlie Chaplin film. It is my personal favorite Chaplin film, City Lights. And as I said in the VHS video, it is the one to watch. Like, if you're only going to watch one silent film, this is the one to watch. Of course, you would be doing yourself a great disservice if you only ever watched one, but if you're only going to watch one, this is the one to watch. I believe that is almost a direct quote.
Just about.
It is the culmination of the art form as presented in its day. It was 1931, and he had started filming it in 1927, 1928. And right as the industry was making the transition into talking pictures, he was working on City Lights. And so this is really the pinnacle of the art form. And you can always look back and replicate, like The Artist. The Artist was a great film, but again, it's a very contemporary silent film that they had this plethora of creative body to pick from and to be influenced and inspired from. In City Lights, Chaplin was really kind of focusing on his art and his craft. He wasn't looking back, but he also wasn't necessarily looking forward. He was looking in the moment and what would serve his story in the moment and serve his craft in the moment. And as a traditional vaudeville actor, that was his craft, and that's what he was looking to perfect and pursue in the moment. He wasn't looking ahead into talking pictures, and he wasn't looking back at what he had already done. He was in the moment, and I think that's also, it comes through in this film specifically just because of where it falls historically.
Yeah, this one I had never seen. I've seen a handful of his films, but I mean, we're talking decades ago. So I was excited to see this one, and I thought top to bottom, just a great movie. And, we're talking about Charlie Chaplin, and I think people kind of take for granted, oh, he's a legend, he's a whatever. But like, when you just really watch him do his thing, the guy's a master. I mean, in every sense of the word. Man, by the end of the film, I had a little mist in my eye. It was, I didn't expect that. I knew I would enjoy myself. I didn't know that it was going to get me a little choked up at the end.
The only thing I knew about Chaplin was that he lived in Switzerland and that he made Modern Times, because that's a movie we have to watch when we're in France. In middle school, we have to watch it. Yeah, I didn't know much about him, but it was a good discovery. And after that, I wanted to watch other films of him. So I watched The Kid and Gold Rush also. And yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's romantic, and I love romance. So it's a kind of a burlesque story, and it's really artistic, really acrobatic also. So he's a good actor, and for me, it's a sportive guy also. What he does, it's incredible. And I thought that maybe it will be long to watch a movie in black and white with no dialogue, but actually you really don't need dialogue. And you notice that dialogue is not necessary when you have a very good way to express yourself. That's crazy to understand so much without any word. And it's not naive, it's not innocent, because you have something, a deep message in it. And that's what I loved the most, is that you have a moving story, but you have a message behind it.
I got the same thing that you got from that, in the sense of the amount of story that was told with no words, right? And all I could think immediately in my head was, man, modern day writers need to go back and watch this guy, because some of these movies that I see
Clearly.
nowadays are so bloated with nothing. nothing for 2
Mhm.
plus hours. And like, where are we going? And to watch him, I don't want to say achieve so much with so little, because I don't want to shortchange his art form, but to really convey that much emotion, that much story with just a couple cards cut in between. You know, if you squish them all together, what is that? Maybe 2 pages worth of dialogue, right? All together. You know, as an actor, you want to have, you know, control over your emotions and your delivery and all this stuff. But he has a full control over his entire instrument, being his body. I mean, just the slightest move in a different direction, it tells a different story. It's very rhythmic. It's very musical with what he does, how much he brings to the table in the sense of his face, like, you know, the turnaround at the very end when he sees her in the window of the flower shop. It just with the eyes and the flowers kind of in his face, and he's doing this cutesy coy thing, but like just what he gave you with that. I don't throw the term master around very loosely. That's a master. You know, someone who knew exactly what to do, when to do it, executed it perfectly, and he got the emotion that he wanted to, and that's why he's successful. That's why we're still talking about him. I mean, just to know yourself that well and have that much control over what you do, masterful.
There really is a lot to be said about this film and about him as a filmmaker. And, you know, and I don't want to shortchange any of his contemporaries. If you go and you look at any Buster Keaton films, he also wrote, directed, produced, and shot and acted in his own films, which are remarkable. And Harold Lloyd, as well as another silent film, physical comedian who did some exceptional work as well. But I feel like with City Lights in particular, the story is so universal and so accessible and executed so well, more so than some other Chaplin films even. You know, Anne had mentioned The Kid and The Gold Rush, and those are kind of very, very specific things. City Lights, even the title, it's a broad idea of like, oh wow, yeah, the city, and the city never sleeps, and the city has all this action and all this excitement, and you can go anywhere at any time in the city and do something. Whereas like The Kid is about the kid, and it's the relationship between the kid, and not everybody likes kids. So right away, you know, a good portion of the audience, they may not be invested or may not be interested. And The Gold Rush is about a very specific time period and a very specific kind of adventure. And not everybody may be interested in that, even though there are these romantic elements and physical comedy elements. Still, the title itself can be limiting, whereas City Lights is intriguing, evocative, and it's attractive. So I think even just picking the right title is a point. You know, Buster Keaton has a very famous film called The General. And the general sounds like a military thing, but it's actually a train.
Yeah, it's a train.
You think that the title is good, City Lights, for this movie? Because I was wondering why they called it City Lights. I can find some reasons, but I was surprised about this title.
I think it is an excellent title, and I think it's mysterious enough to be intriguing, but it's also specific enough where it's like you need to know your setting. And then even the word lights, it's attractive. Like the way insects are attracted to light, people in the dark are attracted to light. It's like a siren. It's calling you. So I think in those ways, it's an excellent and brilliant title because it doesn't tie it down to, like, if it was called like The Tramp and the Flower Girl.
Yeah. Or Lady and the
Like,
Tramp, right?
really?
Flower Lady and the Tramp.
Blind Lights, no? It would have been romantic, I don't know.
Blind Lights?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but there's more to it than just that because, again, he has his whole relationship with the millionaire, and that's part of the city. And then the millionaire, he in his own way is blind because he's drunk and he doesn't remember things when he's sober. And so he has this own like social blindness about him. But again, he's blinded by the light of the city and the party and all that other stuff. You know, they go out and they have fun, and then he comes back and he's like, who are you? Where did you come from? Get rid of that guy.
That's why Blind Light would have been a perfect title, because the millionaire is a light outside, but he's blind in his life, and the girl is blind in real life, but she's a light inside.
But the word blind, I think, would be one of those inhibiting things for people. You know, they would think it's about blindness, and it's not. It's so much more. It's about the city and what's happening in the city.
I personally took it as all these events that happen under the city lights, right? There's a romance, There's a boxing match, there's a robbery, there's parties at this nightclub. So you have all these different things taking place under the city lights.
The film says so much without saying very much at all. Like, it's a silent film, and you said a lot of writers could learn from it, and I completely agree. If you look at some of the more impactful films throughout history, they're big on action, and it doesn't have to be explosions and car chases. When people hear action, they think of that, and really it's
Right.
movement, keeping things moving, keeping the story moving. Even Kubrick, he doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue going on in his films, but it's telling the story visually, utilizing the camera, utilizing the actors and the blocking, and then the performance. We talked about Clockwork Orange. Mr. Alexander, at the end, he has that expression on his face, that like deranged, eyes rolling back, and Alex has that eye rolling back thing, and Jack Torrance has that eye rolling back thing, and Private Pile has that eye rolling back thing. It's a physical, visual signature. And it's always, with like a slow push in, because we're moving into his mindset. We're moving into the character's mentality, and the sound drowns out as we approach. And it's something that I think comes from that silent film foundation. You also got to think about it. Here are people making films, big films, successful films with like no audio, just music after the fact. Okay, so now we were talking earlier about just filming on your phone. And one of the biggest problems with films, and especially early films for people in short films, is the sound. People should try to go back and make silent films just to learn the craft a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. And then when you master that, then you can add sound elements to it, or sound effects, and just build on that. Sergio Leone, he shot all of his films silent. He just rolled camera and they dubbed everything after the fact. So every sound you hear, every sound effect, every spur, every horse, every crow was put in after the fact, and all the actors dubbed everything after the fact because they were shot with international cast and crews, and not everybody spoke the same language. So they just shot the movie, they shot the action, and then they did it after the fact. So again, that's partly building on that silent film approach. And it's like, we don't need all this dialogue. We need the dialogue we need to tell the story. We don't need the superfluous dialogue to fill space and pad time.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I think when I first got my very first iPhone, one of the apps I downloaded was a silent film movie maker, and I made a couple of silent films just to see, how much fun it would be, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And there is an episode with that any line, and they don't talk during the episode. And I saw a documentary about this episode. And the actors were saying that it was a huge challenge for them because every movement means something then. So they had to control how they're going to move, their face and everything. And especially when they had to learn the scene, they didn't have line to learn, of course, but they have to be really precise on what they had to do. So it was more complicated actually for them than a regular episode with dialogues.
I was going to point out, there's not just him in that film. There's some people in that film who've done spectacular work. The timing that it takes to do some of these things, particularly the boxing scene, that timing with the referee and his opponent, that's like a choreographed dance where the slightest misstep, the whole thing's ruined. The whole take is ruined. I took dance class for many years. That is some backbreaking work. To get those movements down, be in rhythm with those people, to work at that stuff like that, and to be that seamless and that spot on. Man, what a payoff. It's hilarious. It kind of brings you a joy to see these guys doing this thing. And then the timing of that, the musicality of those motions, and then even more subtle ones, but in the beginning of the film, when he's standing almost by that trap door in front of the window, and it disappears and he's about to step in. With the slightest misstep, he's in the hole, or then when that guy comes up just the right height and he's kind of giving the guy the business, and then he realizes, wait, when he finally gets all the way up there, this guy's way bigger than me. So there's the visual gags, but just the timing of all of that stuff. Whoever's running the trap door, who's cueing him, so much planning, I would think, went into that. Alone, and the payoff is fantastic. And you're like, oh my god, he's gonna fall in the hole. Oh, he's gonna fall, and he doesn't. And it's just that journey he takes you on. So it's so much fun.
Actually, the one with the trap is the scene I love the most. I think I love also suicide scene with the rope, and at the end, Charlie Chaplin is the one going to into the water. You don't expect that, so it's super funny.
He really goes flying into that water.
Definitely, yeah. And I like also the scene when the blind girl is changing the water from the flower pot, and but she doesn't see him, so she threw the water in his face, and we don't really expect that, it's surprising even for the audience, and it's really well done. So I love this scene too, and it's romantic the way he reacts. So
I think two of my favorites, the boxing scene, just because the amount of work that goes into that, and him
Yeah.
flying forward with the double fists was hilarious. But then I gotta say, I'm still drawn to the end of that film when those kids are mistreating him and the spitballs on him, and then she's laughing at the goings on of that and the irony of how she was kinder almost when she was blind. I'm not saying that she's a villain or anything like that at all, but it's almost like she saw better. And then when she touches his hand and realizes it's him, I mean, that's masterful storytelling there. It's beautiful storytelling.
Well, it's just such a beautiful piece of punctuation. The realization that she has at the end when she touches his hand and then she says, "Now I can see." It's
Yeah.
like now, like, she was taking it for granted almost. And not only did he like give her the ability to see, but then like he showed her how to see in that very final moment with the
Right. That whole,
touching.
and just the think about the tramp, who is a guy who has next to nothing, right? That hat and that cane is pretty much, it's like the jerk. All I have is this paddle game and this remote control, right? But he's got those two things of his worldly possessions. And then like when she's at that point, she's got the shop now, she can see, things are looking up for her. He's the ripped and tattered clothes, he's getting spit on in the street. And just that juxtaposition of those two people, where they ended up, you feel for him, and you worry. I mean, sitting there, I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to have a happy ending, because it must have a happy ending, because it's one of those old timey movies. But there was a couple moments like they're going to rob him, he's going to lose the money. And then I'm concerned, like, what the fuck's, like, how is he going to get the money back? And then, the cops come, they think it's him. And what a fun ride to be on. And then to end up at that beautiful point where she's now at her highest and he's pretty much at his lowest, and they still can find each other. And I don't know. Beautiful, beautiful movie. I'm glad you recommended it, because, and again, nothing against silent films, nothing against Chaplin. I just, sometimes these movies just, they just fall through the cracks, and you don't think about them. But I'm glad you suggested this one this time around.
Well, and that's one thing that I want to do with the VHS selections is kind of, cast a broad net for people who are interested in exploring film or exploring cinema. And I just want to share some of my favorites with them. And so I try to pick things from different decades so we can explore the evolution of stories and of the craft and of the elements of filmmaking. And yeah, City Lights, like I said, this is my number one silent film. Like if there's only one, I'm glad it's this one.
The first scene, before we see Chaplin on the statue, there is a speech made, and we don't understand what they say. It's like, I would say it's like a Muppet talking, but I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? It's weird. And I was wondering
Yeah.
if it was kind of a message from Chaplin to say that he was not really into movies with dialogue.
100% that was a message, and I think it was heard loud and clear. Like, you don't need that to be entertained, and it is a lot of people crowded around, and it's a lot of people patting themselves on the back. It's satire and it's symbolism, and it's all these different things rolled right into the very first scene of this film, and it just kind of establishes it because, at the time he was the biggest star on the planet. He could really go anywhere. And one of his beliefs was, okay, I'm not going to have the tramp speak, because then I'm going to isolate the other 9/10 of the world who don't speak English. And if he gives him an identity like that, then he loses a lot of his universal appeal, even though he's in an America type setting. But really, you just swap out the card in a different language and boom, now he's in Spain, or he's in Italy, or he's in France, he's in Russia, he's anywhere and he's everywhere, because again, there's no language, there's no accent locking him down. And so that's why, yeah, in the beginning, it's like they're speaking with a kazoo. It's nonsense. The role of the millionaire, was also a
Mhm.
lot of fun. His performance was great because he shows up and he's ready to commit suicide, throw himself in the lake, and then the tramp interferes and then kind of turns
Mhm.
his life around in a not unsimilar way as he does to the blind girl. But here's a guy who has it all and doesn't
Mhm.
want
Yeah.
it, and then there's the girl who has nothing and just wants basic things. She just wants to be able to see,
Yeah.
and like live her life and like have a comfortable existence. And then there's the tramp in between, and he's kind of like this almost spirit in
Yeah.
this world that kind of floats through and like helps people and touches them. And even the reversal that he executes between where he takes the millionaire's money to help the blind girl. He's the only one who can make that connection in this world. The millionaire isn't going to do it because he's too busy being
Yeah.
miserable or drunk.
Yeah, the tramp kind of balances the scales here.
That tends to be the tramp's role in the world. When you look at the other films, yes, he's comedy, but he's also
Mhm.
drama. He just walks that line.
The interesting thing about it is even at his funniest moments in this movie, there still seems to be some kind of unspoken pain with him. I think that's what draws everybody to him. He's kind of the everyman and goes on these different adventures and these different journeys and meets these different people and that's it's kind of like life, right? We all have this, a bit of a pain, a bit of pain inside of us. We have a bit of joy inside of us and then we just go through life meeting different people and go on these different adventures and hopefully we can help people for the better. Well, at least I'd like to think so, right?
In typecasting, we talked a bit about how some comedic actors carry around this great pain or this great trauma that allows them to swoop into uninhibitedness because it's an escape from that pain. But then when they need to, they can pull that pain forward and delve into a dramatic foray that highlights that pain. And Charlie Chaplin, I mean, I've read his autobiography. I've read interviews with him. I've seen a lot of his films. You can get a sense of what he's been through in his life, and you can see how those elements have shaped his character of the tramp. He came from poverty. He knows that world. He knows what it is to be hungry. He knows what it is to sleep in the street. He knows what it is to lose everything because he had a very hard life with his mother who was not mentally stable. And when he found success, he was able to bring comfort to everybody's life, but he never forgot where he came from. And that's something that I think is the cornerstone and foundation of his work as an artist, not just as a performer or filmmaker, but in everything. That's something that he's carried forward throughout his entire career. We've been talking about his skill as a filmmaker and his skill not only as a filmmaker, but as a performer in his films. Subsequently, he went back and rescored a lot of his films. So even though those films are now probably in the public domain, but his score isn't because he wrote that much later in his career when he was living in Switzerland and he took up composing. He went back and wrote specific scores for all of his films. So writer, director, producer, composer, he is, the quintessential Maverick filmmaker. And again, not that other people weren't doing it at the time, but I think he just had such a high standard because he knew what it was to have nothing. And so whatever he had, he wanted to make as good as possible for people, to be an inspiration, if nothing else.
I would dare say add choreographer to that list of achievements. A lot of those motions, I mean,
Of
geez,
course.
you're putting that stuff together. The timing, the just the nuance in some of these gags in this film. Brilliant stuff. The deadpan reaction or the raise of an eyebrow. I mean, like I said, a master. But I had choreography. I mean, that boxing scene alone, the timing on that, the
Mm-hmm.
steps, like okay, you swing, I swing, you duck, I duck. Yeah, I'm behind him, you're behind him, you hit. I mean, it's like a dance or even like an intricate sword fight. I mean, you've got to be there for the other person. And in this case, it's a trio, so the three of them working together in tandem. I mean, great stuff. So I would say choreography on there too.
And the one thing that, we haven't really mentioned is a lot of this stuff is done in a wide master shot. There are no tricks in the editing. There's no cuts to a close up of like the glove connecting with the face. Everything is purposeful and everything is kind of done in the master, so you can see the effort that was put forth. Not that you're made to see, oh, look at the effort that they did, but it's really looking back as something that we can learn from. It's like, oh wow, there's no cut there. That's all one take that they perfected and then
Yeah, no
executed.
CGI. It's all in frame. It's all happening as you're seeing it. Like we said earlier, you could have all the bells and whistles, and that's great. But if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the respect, the talent, the love of the craft, this movie wouldn't be what it was. But because he was beyond exceptional at what he did and was dedicated to it, I mean, you could tell this guy lived and breathed this, and it shows.
Yeah, actually, my favorite one is The Kid. I think it's a really moving story, and I heard that he had the idea of doing this movie after he lost his first child. So I think it really means something to him, and you can see it through the movie. So, and the little boy who plays the kid is amazing. So, yeah, I love this movie. It's really moving, really touching. The Gold Rush. I wasn't super enthusiastic about this movie. I heard it was a big thing when it came out, but no, I didn't really like it. And the same for Modern Times. I didn't really like it. I was surprised it came out really later after The Kid and The Gold Rush. I think it was the mid 30s. So I was surprised it was during the time that silent movies were not really popular anymore, because this movie is quite silent also. I mean, you don't have much dialogue in it. So it's impressive to see that after the silent movie stopped, he kept doing this kind of stuff.
The kid in The Kid is Jackie Coogan, who grew up to be Uncle Fester on The Addams Family.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he had a pretty extensive career, and he started out as the kid in the Charlie Chaplin film 1921. Modern Times is kind of almost his bridge towards talking films. That one does have some synchronized sound elements going on, and again, it's part of the title is Modern Times, and it's how the tramp is transitioning into the modern times, not only in terms of filmmaking, but just the world in general, and how the world is moving beyond this character. And it is essentially the final appearance of the tramp. The Great Dictator is a full talking film, and Chaplin plays a tramp-like character, but it's really almost a it's a farce on Adolf Hitler from beginning to end, and it is a brilliant one. And his monologue at the end of that film is one of the best monologues I think ever composed, delivered, recorded in film. So you should definitely check out The Great Dictator when you have 2 hours. But it is a full-on talking film. That is his first official talkie. Modern Times, he does sing a song, but it's a nonsensical song, and it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. It
But
sounds
again, he
French.
didn't want to give the tramp. Yeah, he didn't want to give the tramp an identity like that, so he just made up this gibberish song that the tramp would sing in, and that I think was part of the appeal for audiences of that film. It's like you can finally hear Charlie Chaplin's voice, but it's it's just brilliant the way he kind of like turns
And
it
then
on
he
its
wrote that
ear.
song "Smile," right? That's a beautiful song. So
Yeah,
you could tell he had a lot of pain and a lot of again, it's one of those things, and you had asked me last episode, is it easier for comedy or drama? And I think when you have some comedians who have a lot of pain inside, they're able to access something that's really beautiful about themselves, almost about humanity. And I think it comes through in that song as well. For me, I think if you were thinking about watching City Lights, or if you were thinking of watching a Chaplin movie or a silent film, I would give this one high marks. If you're going to do it, and I would say do it sooner than later. Have this movie in your life. I think that's my takeaway, at least.
Yeah, great movie to be watched. Yeah. And I would recommend The Kid also, because really it's for me it's the best one of Chaplin. But City Lights, it's a romantic one.
Yeah, I've long been a fan of Chaplin, and I remember when I first saw this one, and just the point at the end, that final moment, it really, that's the thing that just makes it skyrocket above and beyond most things you are likely to witness in this plane of existence, and that is the highest praise I think I could bestow upon a film. But especially, like I said, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but if you're only going to watch one, this is the one, and if you like it, then there's plenty more to explore. On that note, I think we're going to wrap it up here today at the Visually Hidden Podcast. We will have another VHS selection coming up, so be sure to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any of those, and then we'll be discussing it on the next episode. Steve is over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner, so be sure to check him out over there on Instagram. Ann and I, of course, are also on Instagram and Letterboxd, so you can see what we've been watching and what we think about it. And until next time, you have the right to remain silent.